The air is warm, heavy with heat from the fire, sticky with the scent of molten wax and lavender. I hear the door to this old Victorian house creaks open as I sit with needles in hand, weaving stitches as the world beyond these windows dissolves into night. And through the shadows, I see you, my starling. Your gaze gleams with the same fierce brilliance as the stars that pierce the blackness above. Sit with me. Wait with me, for the hour draws near, that rare sacred time each week when I am able to sink into the dark embrace of a penny dreadful. Ah, those wicked little volumes, steeped in crime hauntings and grotesque imaginings. And tonight, one of them shall be ours. You and I, together, will stitch horrors and wonders into being, as the stars above bear witness. So draw close, claim your chair, let the hush of this house press against your heart. And prepare, my starlings, for our very first dreadful. London, in the year 1785, lay shrouded in fog, the kind that blurred the lamps until they seemed no more than faint halos trembling in the murk. The streets were damp and uneven, their stones slick with 1,000 feet of mud and filth, and the air thick with coal smoke from 100,000 chimneys. The carts rattled, the cries of hawkers rose and fell, and all the while the River Thames rolled on, sluggish and dark, bearing with it the refuse of the great city. Fleet Street was alive as ever. Printers shouted to one another across alleys, clerks hurried with papers pressed close to their chests, and coach wheels ground through the mire. Yet, amidst all this bustle, one shop seemed strangely apart, though it sat squarely upon the busy thoroughfare. It was a barber's shop. The building was narrow, the paint upon its front blistered and peeling, its windows so begrimed they seemed more fit for hiding than for showing. Above the door creaked a weather-worn sign bearing the faded stripes of red and white. The pole leaned crookedly, swaying in the mist like a gallows arm. Curious passers-by gave the place no more than a glance, but those who dared step within found themselves in a room curiously dim, where the light seemed swallowed rather than spread. There, behind a chair of worn leather, and before a small table on which gleamed his instruments, sat Sweeney Todd. He was a tall man, thin to gauntness, with shoulders sharpened by hunger, and long arms that hung with a peculiar heaviness at his sides. His hair was black as jet and brushed straight back from his forehead, which was broad and furrowed. His nose was long, his lips thin, and his eyes, deep-set, dark and restless, glittered with a fire that unsettled those who met them. He looked like a man carved from shadow, one who lived less among the living than among the thoughts of his own mind. In his hand he held a razor. The blade caught what little light entered the shop and sent it forth again, pale and cold as moonlight. Todd's fingers caressed the steel almost tenderly, stroking it along the strop with a rhythm both patient and precise. The hiss of leather and edge filled the silence. Few could meet his gaze without unease, and fewer still could sit in his chair without a shiver. For though Todd's manner was outwardly civil, there was something in him that felt not merely unfriendly, but inhuman. The door opened with a reluctant groan. A man entered, a sailor by his gait and dress. He was broad in the shoulders, his coat worn by salt and spray, and his face tanned by sun and weather. His boots left wet prints upon the floor. In his hands he carried a parcel, wrapped tightly in oilskin, which he cradled against his chest as though it held all the treasure of the Indies. Sweeney Todd's eyes flicked to the bundle at once.
"Good evening," he said, his voice low, almost polite, though with a cadence that suggested mockery was never far behind. "You appear fresh from the sea. A shave, perhaps? The ocean leaves its own mark upon a man's face, but I find a razor leaves a cleaner one." The sailor gave a short laugh, though uneasily. "Aye, a shave will do me well. It's been weeks since I've seen a proper barber, and I would look my best before I deliver this." He patted the parcel. Todd's gaze lingered. "A gift, then? How fortunate the lady who shall receive it." "A string of pearls," the sailor said in a half-whisper, as though reluctant to trust the air itself. "Rare ones, gathered from far seas, and worth a fortune even in London. They're for Joanna Oakley, the woman I'm promised to. She waits for me, and I for her." Across Fleet Street, in a spectacle maker's shop, Joanna Oakley did indeed wait. She stood often at the window, her young face pale with watching, her eyes fixed upon the throng outside. Each day she searched for her beloved Mark Ingestri, who had sailed months before. His last letter spoke of peril and fortune, of pearls bright as moonlight, and of his return to her side. Each day her hope faltered, but still she looked. And always the barber's crooked sign swung before her eyes, creaking like some ill-omened pendulum. Back in the dim shop, Todd's lips stretched into the semblance of a smile. "Pearls," he murmured. "How delicate. How easily lost. Or kept." "Come, sir, let us see to you. My chair is the most comfortable in London." The sailor hesitated, then allowed himself to be guided into the great leather seat. He laid the parcel upon his knees, one hand still resting upon it. Todd draped a cloth about his throat and took up the razor once more. The hiss of steel on strop filled the silence. He spoke, his words slow, deliberate. "London is a hungry place, sir. Men come from the sea, full of life and hope, and yet, strangely enough, they vanish. The streets are like quicksand, swallowing them whole. The sea, at least, gives back its dead. London does not." The sailor shifted uneasily. "I've seen storms that split masts and tempests that swallowed ships. But I'll not be cowed by cobblestones and fog." "Ah," said Todd softly. "The storms of London are not of wind and wave. They are storms of men." The barber leaned close, his hand steady as stone, the razor gleaming in the lamplight. The sailor, though he tried to relax, felt unease coil within him. The shop was too quiet, the air too thick, as though the walls themselves leaned in to listen. Todd's boot shifted, resting almost idly upon the floorboard near the chair's base. Beneath that board, hidden from all eyes but his,
lay the cleverest contrivance of his craft, the secret that made his chair not merely a seat, but a snare. With the pressure of a foot, he could tilt it back and down, casting its occupant into the pit below. But not yet. Todd was a patient man. "Hold still," he murmured, as the razor kissed the sailor's throat with a whisper of steel. One slip, and it would be all over. Strange, is it not, how a man's life hangs upon so delicate an edge? The sailor gave a nervous chuckle, though his hand tightened upon the parcel. "I trust your skill." "As you should," Todd replied, though his smile was as cold as the blade. Across Fleet Street, Johanna Oakley pressed her forehead to the cool glass of her father's shop window. The fog rolled past, swallowing faces, carrying shadows like flotsam on a tide. How often had she imagined Mark's figure emerging from that murk, his step sure, his smile bright, his hand bearing the promised gift. How often had she whispered his name into the night, praying the wind might carry it to him. Her father, the old spectacle maker, sighed and laid a hand upon her shoulder. "Joanna," he said gently, "you wear your eyes to hollowness with watching. The sea is long, the world wider still. Men do not always return when they say." She shook her head. "Mark will return, I feel it. He carries with him a string of pearls, bright as the moon. He promised it, and his promise is worth more than any jeweller's gold." The old man said nothing. He only turned back to his lenses and left her to her vigil. Within the barber's shop, Todd shaved with deft precision, his hand never trembling, his expression never altering. Yet his thoughts moved swiftly, calculating. Pearls, rare, precious, easy to hide, easier still to sell. How convenient that such treasure should pass through his hands, brought directly to him by fate. The sailor closed his eyes, sighing as the blade slid clean along his cheek. Todd's gaze fell upon the parcel once more, and he imagined the gleam of the pearls spilling across his table like frozen drops of milk. "You say this gift is for Joanna Oakley," Todd said softly. "Yes," replied the sailor, "the dearest girl in London. She waits for me, I know it. This will be the proof of my fortune, the pledge of my faith." Todd's lip curled faintly. "Faith is fragile, sir. Promises weaker still. London swallows more than men. It swallows hopes, oaths, and love. Are you so certain she waits?" The sailor bristled. "I am certain. As certain as I sit here." Todd chuckled under his breath, a sound as joyless as the rasp of the strop. Time passed slowly, marked only by the hiss of the razor and the creak of the swinging sign outside. At last Todd set down his blade and folded the cloth from the sailor's neck. "There," he said, "as smooth as any lord. No charge, consider it my welcome to London." The sailor blinked in surprise. "No charge? You are generous, sir." "Generous," Todd repeated, and the words sounded strange in his mouth. "Yes, generous." He stepped back, eyes fixed upon the parcel. "If you would permit me to store your gift for safekeeping while you refresh yourself further."
London is not kind to those who flaunt wealth in the streets. But the sailor shook his head. No, thank you. These pearls are too dear to leave from my sight. I will deliver them myself, and soon. Todd's expression tightened, though he forced a thin smile. As you wish.
Outside, the fog thickened. The sound of wheels rattling on cobbles echoed faintly, muffled by the mist. Johanna, watching, still thought she glimpsed a figure moving behind the barber's window. A shadow shifting, a gleam of steel. Her heart leapt, then faltered. She pressed her hand harder to the glass. "Mark," she whispered. Within, Todd's patience frayed. He circled the chair, his fingers brushing its back. The sailor rose, adjusting his coat, still clutching the parcel. Todd's eyes narrowed. One motion, one press of his boot, and the matter would be done. The sailor would vanish into the dark, and the pearls would be his. Yet the timing was not perfect. He had to be sure. He had to act without witness. He watched, waited. His breath measured, his ears straining for the lull of passing footsteps outside. The sailor smiled faintly. "Thank you, Barber. You've a steady hand. I'll not forget it." "Oh," said Todd, voice silk over steel. "I rather think you will." The sailor shifted his weight, glancing toward the door as though the fog itself had called his name. The parcel was still in his hands, always in his hands. Fingers splayed across the oilskin as if it were a beating heart he dared not set down. "Just a moment more," said Sweeney Todd's tone, almost friendly, as he plucked a cloth from the counter and flicked it open with a snap. "You have a stray hair at the nape, untidy. London judges a man by his finish." The sailor laughed softly. "You take pride in your work." "I take pride in a thing done cleanly," Todd answered. "And when a thing is done cleanly, it is soon forgotten." He gestured, and the sailor indulgently resumed his seat. The chair received him with a sigh of old leather. Todd came behind, comb in one hand, razor in the other, gentle as a valet, deft as a surgeon. He lifted the sailor's collar with care and smoothed the last stubborn strand into order. The blade whispered once more, a kiss upon the skin, and the sailor relaxed by inches. Men return from the sea with all manner of superstitions, Todd went on, conversational as a priest in a confessional. Charms sewn into cuffs, saints in pockets, little bones knotted into cord. Pearls, though. Pearls are older than any saint. They rise from depth and darkness, and the world calls it beauty. You speak of them as if you've worn them, the sailor said, smiling. I have worn many things, replied Todd, and none of them long. Outside the shop, the street exhaled. The fog pressed its face to the window panes, whitening them. The barber's sign gave a weary creak. Across the way, Johanna Oakley, who had not abandoned her post at the glass, lifted her chin suddenly, as if some thread from within the barber's house had tugged at her. Her father spoke to her, but she did not hear. The lamp beside her trembled in its bracket, flame guttering, regaining itself, like resolve in a frightened breast. Inside, Todd tapped the sailor's shoulder lightly. A moment. Sit firm. The sailor sat firm. Todd's boot drifted. It came to rest, almost idly, upon a certain board at the base of the chair,
no different to any other to a stranger's eye, but to Todd, as distinct as any familiar's hand. Beneath that patch of floor slumbered springs and hinges, levers and tongues, a throat of wood and iron, hungry and exact. The mechanism needed neither strength nor malice, only pressure. The malice it left to him. He did not press. Not yet. "Johanna will be glad to see you," he said, and the sailor smiled at the name. "You will place the pearls in her hand, I suppose." A handsome gesture. And she will say what all women say when they receive such tokens. What is it they say? "It is too much." And then they wear them every hour thereafter. "Sir," the sailor answered, "you talk queerly, but I've no quarrel with a queer talker who shaves a steady line. And yes, I'll put them in her hand, with God's help, before the clock strikes 8. "God's help," Todd repeated. "Yes, he is much called upon in London, and seldom in." He leaned across the sailor, plucked a stray hair from the cloth with 2 long fingers, and held it to the light as if it were a thread of fate. Then he let it drift, a fine shadow falling through lamplight. "Would you like a tonic?" he asked softly. "The air is damp. London likes to cling to the lungs. I have a cordial that sets the chest to rights." "No cordial," the sailor said, good-humoured but firm. "Only my feet, and quickly, to Oakley's shop." Todd's gaze ran along the line of the sailor's jaw, over the parcel cradled in his lap, and back to the boot that waited, patient as a wolf at a fold-yard gate. He returned the razor to the strop. The shop filled again with that susurration, steel breathing against leather, until the sound became the only sound, and the sailor's own breath adjusted itself to the rhythm without knowing it. He spoke again, though his eyes were on the door. "Tell me, sir," he said, "you will find your lady alone?" "Her father will be there," the sailor replied. "He is a cautious man, but he loves her. He will see the pearls and believe what letters might not persuade him." "Fathers are a difficulty," Todd mused. "They have long memories and short tempers when money is mentioned. Still, pearls are a language every age understands." He lifted the blade, admired its edge, and brought it down for one last, trifling pass at the nape. The sailor, trusting, bowed his head a fraction. Todd's eyes half closed, not in compassion nor in prayer, but the way a cat narrows its gaze when it measures distance. The street outside hushed. Somewhere a church bell tested its tongue with a single quiet stroke. Todd's boot found the fulcrum. "Hold," he said gently, as if to adjust the cloth. The sailor, obliging, settled his shoulders. Then Todd pressed. The world, for the sailor, became an inrush of air and a lurching sky. The chair did not tip so much as vanish beneath him, and he with it. Down, down, in a hiss of sliding wood, and the angry bark of a spring released. He had time for a half-formed cry, "Ho!" And then the dark took him, mouth and lungs, in one bruising gulp. The parcel leaped with him. Oilskin flashed, then fell. The trap snapped shut as neatly as a well-cut sentence. Silence gathered,
a silent thing, but full of meaning. Dust motes quivered in the lamplight and decided nothing had happened. Sweeney Todd stood very still for the space of one breath, then two. The corner of his mouth turned a degree. Approval, not delight. He set the razor down with meticulous care, as if it had played its part upon a stage and deserved the courtesy of a bow. He straightened the chair's arms, which had swung in the act, and smoothed the cloth that had fallen, tucking its corner precisely over the arm as if a customer might return to occupy it momentarily. Then he stooped. The parcel lay where it had struck the floor, having flown free of the sailor's grasp as gravity made its argument. Todd lifted it, felt the soft resistance of layers and the harder clustered weight within. The knots were good sailor's knots, brisk and honest. He opened them. Oilskin fell away with a sigh, and the thing it had protected rolled into the barber's palm. Pearls. Not many, not few. Enough to encircle a young woman's throat and make it whiter by contrast. They shone not with a candle's flame, but with a cooler light altogether, the light of things born in silence. Each was a small moon, and together they were a tide. Todd let them pool in his hand, then spill to the table in a soft rattle, like rainfall upon an empty church. He drew one along the edge of the razor. It clicked faintly, unimpaired. He smiled, without showing teeth. Across the street, Johanna drew a breath that trembled and did not know why. Todd rewrapped the pearls with the tenderness of a man staunching a wound, tight, neat, safe, and slid the parcel into the breast of his coat, where it settled against the beat of his heart and found it indifferent. He took up the lamp from the counter, its flame steadiest thing in the room, and turned toward the panel at the rear. At the panel he paused and listened. From the depths came a muffled thud. Another. Then a scrape as of something discovering its boundary. It was the ordinary grammar of a fall. Shock, movement, recognition. The sounds pleased him. They suggested process. He lifted the panel, revealing a short stair curling to a narrow passage, and lowered the lamp so that its light prowled the first few treads. "Be still," he said conversationally into the dark, though the dark did not answer, and the man in it could not, at present, find words. "You will be wanted shortly." He let the panel ease shut, set the lamp upon a hook beside it, and returned to the chair, where he took up a brush and flicked a speculative hair or two from the cushion, an honest touch of the trade. He rinsed his razor. He drew down the sleeves of his coat, which had crept when he stooped. He placed the comb square to the edge of the table. He straightened the small mirror, though there was no one to look into it. The barber's sign out front gave another creak, as if remarking to the fog that commerce continued. Then, as if to answer that creak, there came a faint tap at the door, no more than a finger's courtesy. Todd lifted his head, the pearls cool against his breast, and considered whether to admit what waited. Johanna, across the way, leaned forward unconsciously, as though her very will could push the door open without hands. The tap did not come again. Todd smiled to himself and turned the key.